Hey, it's Kate from Prenursing Smarter, and today we're going to talk about how to study for the TEAS science section. In this video, we're going to go over what to study, the topics and question breakdown, how to study it, give you some strategy tips to apply what we're going to talk about, and then also give you some tips and resources to help you get started. I'm an online test prep expert who's helped more than 10,000 students prepare for the TEAS, and I love helping busy pre-nursing and allied health students get into the schools they want. What's on the TEAS science section? The TEAS science section has 50 total questions, and 6 of them aren't scored. You won't know what these are. You'll also have a mix of questions that follow the same standardized breakdown. You'll have 18 scored anatomy and physiology questions, 9 scored biology questions, 8 scored chemistry questions, and 9 scored scientific method questions. No matter what version of the TEAS you take, you'll have this question breakdown. But in this TEAS Science Study Guide, let's take a little bit more detail of what to actually cover. Your anatomy and physiology is the largest single section of the TEAS. It makes sense. You're going into healthcare, right? And you'll be tested on essentially all the main organ systems in the human body. You'll have some questions on body organization. This is about cells, tissues, organ structures, and body cavities. And then you'll have all the different body systems from the respiratory system to the neuromuscular system. You'll also be tested on non-infectious diseases or pathologies. So it's good to know some examples of typical pathologies for each of these body systems. And in my online TEAS prep program, I have a whole PDF download of all of the types of pathologies you might see for each body system. Biology covers a lot of cellular biology, including DNA and chromosomes, genetics and inheritance. You'll also need to know macromolecules. Macromolecules are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And for the TEAS science section, you'll need to be able to identify their monomers and their typical uses in body structures. For genetics and inheritance, it's great to know examples of Mendelian and non-Mendelian genetics and typical ratios for Mendelian crosses. So you might have to look at those Punnett squares. Chemistry, try not to get too stressed out about it. I know a lot of pre-nursing students don't like chemistry. The TEAS science section covers quite a bit of possible scored chemistry questions. These include catalysts and enzymes, balancing chemical equations. Yes, that might be a scored concept on the new TEAS 7 science section. Concentration, bonding, water and solutions, phase changes in states of matter, acids and bases reaction types, and the periodic table of elements. If you need to start studying anywhere, I highly recommend going over the periodic table of elements and understanding what each of the columns means and their behaviors. Finally, you'll have scientific method questions. You might be looking at experimental design and analysis, looking at relationships and sequences. You might also be asked about causes and effects of health conditions that affect a lot of Americans. You'll be seeing these as a healthcare provider. So hypertension, obesity, smoking, understanding some of the causes and effects there is very important. You'll also be asked about scientific measurements and tools. These would be the right tools for volume, length, distance, possibly time as well, and the right scale. So when would you use a volumetric pipette versus a flask? So that is an overview of the exact question breakdown you'll see on the TEAS science section. Now let's talk a little bit about how to actually apply it. When it comes to studying for the TEAS science, I recommend just going in this order. Start with anatomy and physiology, then move to biology, then chemistry, then the scientific method. I recommend this way because anatomy and physiology is the largest single section, and it's what you presumably have the most interest in. Now let's look at the method behind how you can study all of these topics for all these 50 possible questions. First, I recommend taking a practice test or practice quiz questions. I have some on my website for free. You can go check them out. But just get familiar with the types of questions you might see and the concepts. Just take one to start. Next, focus on terms and definitions. So this is a very straightforward way to study, and it's going to build the foundation. Next, go to compare and contrast. This is very important when it comes to studying for the TEAS science section, because you'll see questions that ask you directly about a relationship. Next is process and synthesis. This is putting together the big picture, understanding and really knowing some multi-step procedures and being able to explain a process inside and out. But you can really only do this when you know the smaller parts of the puzzle. Once you've done that, take a practice test or a practice quiz, because a lot of studying for the TEAS is getting the information in your head and then seeing how quickly and accurately you can get it out of your head on test time. Does this method work? Well, in my TEAS test prep program, I looked at data across thousands of students, and I saw a 17-point overall assessment score increase when students begin the program to when they end, and 28 points just on anatomy and physiology. Now, let me give you some examples of how you might organize your studying. Here are some great terms and definitions to help you with your ATIT's science prep. Here we have listing the functional units of an organ system. Many organ systems have what's called the functional unit. For example, in the respiratory system, you really need to know about the alveoli. That is where diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide happens, and that's kind of the action center of that body system. Matching organs to their function is huge. So what does the stomach do? What does the small intestine do? What does the large intestine do? The endocrine system freaks out a lot of TEAS students, and that's normal. If you need a place to start studying, I recommend matching a gland to a hormone. Bone types, pathology of organ systems, and then also organs and body cavities. So what's in the dorsal cavity, what's in the ventral cavity, what's in the abdominal pelvic cavity. Listing the properties of water, again, that's huge for TEAS science. Metric system prefixes, and then different types of measurements. Finally, for biology, steps of mitosis, defining macromolecules, Mendelian ratio, and then different pathologies that are caused by bacteria, viruses, fungus, and then some animals. It's great to know too. How do you actually study these? Terms and definitions. Lists. Writing things out, making flashcards, doing quick quizzes. If you have a study buddy, you quiz each other and quiz yourself. Labeling diagrams and drawing pictures is great. Charts are great. I have a bazillion in my online TEAS prep program that I've already made for you, and these are great to start committing them to memory. The trick here is to do frequent spaced repetition. This might be only 10 minutes a day, but you're doing it every day. So have a little cup of coffee, tea, go over your memorization, and it'll help the material stick for test time. Now let's talk about compare and contrast. The TEAS will likely ask you questions about two topics, so you need to study them together. Sometimes students overlook this when it comes to their TEAS prep. So here are some great compare and contrast topics to study together for the TEAS. Innate versus adaptive immunity, endocrine versus exocrine functions, particularly for the pancreas here. Polar versus nonpolar hormones, arteries versus veins, acids versus bases, ionic versus covalent bonds, mitosis versus meiosis, DNA versus RNA, and osmosis versus diffusion. These are great to study together, and I recommend making little Venn diagrams. So you put the topic and their unique characteristics go in the circle that doesn't overlap, and what they have in common goes in the overlapping circle. Now it's time for process and synthesis. Study the big picture after you've built your foundation. Here are some great things to study for the TEAS science that you should get to after you've focused on terms and definitions. Blood flow through the heart and through the body. The process of digestion and absorption, how a T cell is formed. Trends on the periodic table. Can you predict what's happening with electrons based on where an element is in the periodic table? Feedback loops and how they're used in the body, and how the body responds to stress, because that is often an overlap of other body systems, the nervous system, the muscular system, endocrine system, and the digestive system, to name a few. If you're looking at process and synthesis for blood flow, you'd want to make sure you have all these terms defined first. And then for some of these too, you're also going to be building on that comparison and contrast. How are arteries and veins alike and different? How is diffusion alike and different from perfusion? Let's practice this with biology. So you need to know about mitosis and meiosis. Then here's where the TEAS will very likely ask you, how are the end products different? Both mitosis and meiosis are cellular reproduction. One cell turns into more than one cell. Mitosis, however, has two cells that are genetically identical and are diploid. Meiosis, on the other hand, makes 4 cells that are genetically different and haploid. Do you know what those terms mean? Maybe you need to go put diploid and haploid on flashcards and refresh them. You might be feeling really overwhelmed right now. Remember to take it step by step. In my free preview of my TEAS prep program, I have various ways to set up your TEAS study plan. So here's how you might study TEAS science. First, day 1, pick 3 body systems and spend a couple hours going through them. The next day, pick 3 more, then review those body systems for an hour. Next, do the next 3 body systems, then do biology, then go to chemistry, then build in some review, scientific method, and then review chemistry and scientific method for about an hour on one day. This is just about 2 weeks of studying for the TEAS Science section. So let me know, what are you studying next for TEAS Science? How are you going to apply some of what you learned? Remember to go step by step. It's totally fine to feel overwhelmed at times. If you need any flashcards or extra resources or want to download a free study guide I have for the TEAS Science respiratory system, go ahead and go to my free preview and download it now. It can help you get started. I hope this helps you, and good luck with your TEAS prep. Happy studying.